Good morning guys, Stealth here. Before we start off with this replay, important announcement, Monday 12th of October there will not be a stream. I got a last minute request for a workshop, so I'm going to be away all day and I don't have time to do a stream in the evening. I may do it some other point in the week, so just keep an eye on my YouTube videos or my streaming page and you can find when I'm planning the next stream, but I might just skip it altogether. Other announcement is that in this replay we're looking at Miss Casimira, which, I'm not sure if it's a she or a he, but I'm going to assume it's a he, is a newer player. So he already wrote in this description of the gameplay that it is going to be filled with rookie mistakes, although this was one of his better games. So don't go shouting noob noob, you suck at the game. That's not doing anyone any good. Make sure that if you have a suggestion for him to improve the gameplay, put that in a comment. Tell them at which time slot in the video he could have done something else. That's the way you can improve, that's the way you can make your gameplay better. And it's also a reflection for you. So what could you have done differently provided that you had the same units and the same situation? Anyway, with that out of the way, I also found this replay interesting because it is a Czechoslovakia general deck. That's not something that you see very often. It's usually USSR decks, US decks, NORAD, a lot of Blue 4, but not so much Czech decks. So that is going to be the focus of the attention for this situation. Now he's opening up with 3 slots or 3 groups of transports of 4 and a bunch of AA units. I'm not exactly sure where he's going, but he seems to be going into Alpha. Whereas Spectre 96 is going to be covering the left flank. Now one thing, if you're going towards a zone like that, is to split your infantry up into smaller groups. If you have a large group of 4 infantry units together, then you present the enemy with a big target. And once they start doing bombing runs, which they pretty much guaranteed will, you're going to be faced with a lot of casualties. So in situations like this, where you have a lot of cover and where it's not easy to spot those infantry groups, go with smaller groups of 2, maximum 3. That way you can spread them out over, for example, this tree line, put an AA unit behind it, maybe a tank or 2, like the T-72s he's bringing, throw those in, and you have quite a bit of cover from the enemy. Also, a single S10 MAA unit is not going to be that effective. Sure, they can stun the enemy, but against airplanes they're not going to be that good. So what I usually do is group these up in groups of 2 to make sure that they can provide mutual support, and together they can really quickly take care of helicopters and airplanes alike. On the other hand, if you would like more coverage, because their range against airplanes is only 2.1 clicks, you can spread them out a bit more. But it will require more micromanagement. Other units we can see flying up here are MI4s as well as an MI2. MI4s are in this situation just for rocket pod assistance. You can see all of those rocket pods mounted under the wings of the helicopter with 1 recon, and that's the MI2 that's flying slightly up ahead here, providing eyes for the helicopters for targeting. One thing I'm missing from this setup is a reconnaissance infantry group. A helicopter in this situation is easy to get shot down. You can park, for example, an AA unit like a Stinger infantry somewhere near, and the MI2, which only has 4 hit points, is going to go down with 1 hit. It's not what you want to have happen. So the better alternative here is to deploy multiple groups of reconnaissance infantry, and the Czech have some really nice ones, so make sure you use those next time. As far as CVs, they captured center. Command infantry is a bit out of position here. It's slightly in the open, right next to a helicopter that's landed there. This to me is shouting CV. So if I were to fly over with a helicopter and I would spot that helicopter grounded there, just parked, which is not a logistics helo, I would immediately start bombing this area with artillery or airplanes. So this is a dead giveaway that there is a command unit right there. Another thing that I'm worried about in this situation is the middle ground. They may start bringing in units, but for now they only have a helo wing on the left flank and the infantry on the right. If Blue 4 finds out that this middle ground is empty, they're going to go steamrolling through the middle, possibly taking center or steaming right through into Boris. And it is a conquest game, so you want to capture those zones as quickly as possible. But this could be significant for their situation as it develops. Anyway, he has a lot of motostrelci here. Not the best infantry, but they work okay-ish in forests. A couple of tanks as backup, but these guys only have medium optics. Their OT-64s have poor optics, and the tanks themselves only have medium optics, so you're not that likely to spot anything until you're right on top of it. With recon infantry, that is going to be a little bit better. It's not super. You're not going to spot stuff on the other side of the forest, but it'll help you out a little bit. So try to bring a little bit more reconnaissance infantry next time around, as well as pushing up those AA units. Because if I was Blue 4 and I would notice there's a bit of infantry, I would start to bring in, say, a couple of little birds if I have them, which is likely because we can see Canadian airborne as well as longbow helicopters. So you can expect grenade launcher helicopters here. Those could be really dangerous to my infantry, and I don't have anything that can really shoot back at them at range, other than, I suppose you could say, the 64As, but they only have a range of 1,000 against a helicopter. So try to push those AA units up further to make sure you can actually control this area and make sure that your troops don't easily get knocked out that way. This infantry, by the way, is getting simply offloaded here. Again, an easy artillery target or bombing target. The better position would be to put them in there, and I would personally put them into 2 blocks. So do 2 groups of 20, one there, one there, to make sure that if this group gets destroyed or gets panicked, I can start alternating them in case, or instead of having one heavily panicked group of 40 guys. Now, this is a conquest game, so what we're also looking at is a game where controlling these zones is important. Your income in the sense of unit points or reinforcement points is stable, so you don't get more units or more income depending on how many zones you have. So you can, I'm not going to say throw away units, but you can afford to be a little more lavish with the amount of units that you throw into a conflict. They managed to neutralize the command vehicle here, and I think that he forgot about his infantry CV here, but again, offloading it right next to a helicopter is not a good idea. Try to offload it and then tell your helicopter to get out, because infantry CV is not that difficult or not that easy to spot, but a helicopter is really easy to see, especially when it's landed. So making sure that you queue your orders would help in improving your gameplay. You select the Mi-8, you fly it up to, for example, here, you hold shift, you click unload, you click, say right click here, and make sure that the helo gets out. And that way your infantry CV is close to cover, your helo is not sticking around, and with this you have a very good chance of actually keeping those guys alive and not presenting a big artillery target. Now I gotta say, I'm surprised that they are still getting away with not having anything in Gregory or this middle ridge here. Both are significant sectors. They may not be as significant as they are in Destruction, where you want to try and get as many points, because right now it's holding zones. So if Blue 4 can hold this zone by just putting a couple of tanks here, putting infantry there to back it up, and locking this area down with more infantry, it's fine. They don't have to push, they don't have to get all the way into center. It would be nice if they could do that, but you don't really get an advantage with it, at the expense of a lot of micromanagement and a lot of stuff. Spectre over here is saying decap maybe, and that's what the infantry is coming in for, but it's going to take a while before they get there. You can see that due to the lack of reconnaissance, he really does not have a good spot on whatever is moving about here. So this reconnaissance infantry needs to be a lot closer to the edge of the forest, and he should have a sort of HEGM threat here. He is bringing in Infidras with HEGMs, but unless you have recon, you got really expensive missile launchers sitting there doing nothing. So major importance here is to bring in recon early and often to make sure you have a lot of sight. And the more information you have, the better you can wage your war. We got more reconnaissance infantry coming up here, as well as holding infantry by the looks of it. And I gotta say, I'm quite surprised by the lack of blue 4 here. They have captured Elena, but they're not pushing in infantry into this forest, which is usually where you're going to see quite a bit of infantry on infantry. Command captured this area, and for some reason blue 4 is moving its own command vehicle about. There you go, they stopped it. But red 4 is getting +2 on the conquest points, so they are leading slightly. I'm going to speed it up because there's not that much going on. Let's see, about this situation, more AA to the front. You don't need 2 AA launchers sitting back here. These helos are a good group, but you could try flanking around and trying to flank Elena here as you come in with more infantry. Because if you can control this sector or neutralize it, that will give you a +2 conquest point advantage. Which of course is what you want to get. Now we got Spider Wagon here, as well as transports. And oh look, we finally got infantry here. Panzerskite. Which are making a mess of this T-72. But they're suffering quite heavily for it. And you can see that more of his units are starting to show up. Now, Panzerskite versus Motostrelci is not a good bet. Unless you have support, and that's where these OT-64s can come in really useful. At this conquest mode, it doesn't really matter how many points you lose, so long as you hold your zones. And this is what I was worried about. Intruders. And I don't mean intruders in the sense of home invaders, but bombers. He does not have anything that can deter those bombers from keeping pressure on his infantry here. That's exactly what you saw happen. This group from 40 got wiped out, and there comes another bombing run from Sir Mickey, nuking this infantry group and possibly doing a bit of friendly fire there. But he's really quickly thinning out those infantry groups, which would not have happened if you'd capture infantry groups into smaller groups. So remember, make smaller groups. That is going to be a difference in the amount of forces that you're going to have left. Also, the helos are now pushing up, but it might be a bit late for that. Hopefully they can still get there in time and do some damage to the infantry. But getting rocket pods onto a target in a situation like this, which is hilly, which is very difficult to spot, it is not easy. Your best bet is still going to be infantry and supporting vehicles in a forest situation like this. Now it seems that over on the left the situation is pretty tight. We got Spetsnaz facing off against helicopters, which is not exactly in the advantage of the Spetsnaz, especially once you start to bring in Super Cobras with a Vulcan. But they got a decent grip of this village with VDVs and Egla ends, a bit of AA, but again what I'm missing here on Spec 96's side is reconnaissance. It may have gotten killed, it may have already been destroyed, but still, you should bring in more recon. And having one reconnaissance helo over here is not going to spot too much. So, message for Spectre here, make sure you bring in more reconnaissance, because you're blind. And they could be flanking you right there, trying to move up to, for example, this tree line, and then pushing into your CV in Cheriton, which would be an expensive loss. Now once you see this, it's time to bring in the bombers and more infantry. He lost quite a bit of infantry and he is already bringing in reinforcements, but you need, especially in a map like this, to be planning ahead, further ahead. Because it's going to take quite a while before these infantry units are actually at the front line. So when you lose your infantry, then starting to bring in new reinforcements is too late. You want to get that done sooner. Also, we can still see those intruders coming in, as well as an RBS 90, which is nuking those helicopters, which would be supporting the infantry here. Now this intruder is going to go down, thanks to the Strop stunning it. And here come the MiG-29S's from Spec 96, which should really effectively thin out this infantry. And the transports. There you go, that took care of a lot of it. So great airstrike there by Spect, but it did come at a cost, because most of the infantry and transports here from Miss Casimira got destroyed. Now you can see that the Mi-4 isn't too accurate, and yes, its targeting system has been hit, it's stunned, but these things will not really kill off anything like a transport. For that, you're going to want to bring something else. You're going to bring a dedicated attack helicopter. These are more for stunning larger areas. Now, another lesson here, and he's learning it quite the painful way. Move your infantry from a position after they've been detected. Otherwise, you're going to start seeing artillery units like this opening up on you. He has his own mortars here, and they haven't moved since they fired, and possibly fired more than one salvo. So make sure you move those, otherwise you could be opening yourself up to counter artillery or counter battery missions. Again, not what you want to have happen. Motor Streltsy being engaged here by 9040. With one or two good placed hits, they can take this thing out, but you can see that it is doing a really good job at stunning, panicking, and making these infantry groups largely ineffective. Surprisingly, it was not the infantry, but it was the OT-64s that managed to take out the STRF from the side with their armor penetration on the machine guns, which is 1. And they're going to go up to pretty good values of armor penetration as you get closer. Now I'm going to switch to neutral quickly because I want to see what Blue 4 has in here. And I gotta say, both sides are surprisingly lacking in the middle. They have 2 CVs here, they have 1 group of infantry, and that's it. That's all that there is. So with correct recon, Red 4 could have pushed in here easily, nuking 2 CVs, capturing Gregory, and getting themselves another +1 on the income for the conquest points. Similarly, Blue 4 could have easily pushed through here with a reconnaissance helicopter and easily moved into this zone. So both sides do need to get more reconnaissance infantry. Now let's see what Blue 4 has in here. We got Kustjägere, we got AA infantry, command infantry, AA units on the right flank, which is a good call because you don't want to get flanked by helicopters here. But what I'm missing for Blue 4, other than this AH-350, is a reconnaissance unit more along this side. Because you could go all the way around the map and then the AS-350 would see you, but if you would go a bit more through the middle, you might be able to catch that Iltis CP as a surprise and kill it off, which would neutralize the air reinforcement zone and cause Blue 4 to have to dedicate more resources there. Anyway, back to our star of the game. VDVs are getting smoked here, and you can see that they do spot the MBTs, but they don't have the range, as well as the issue that they have some range, but this side is not heavily defended. It's just a group of AA. So next time, if you want to defend a position like this, bring 1 group of VDV there, because you can easily deter enemy vehicles, tanks, transports, whatever you're dealing with, from pushing in here. And he has enough of them. He has a lot of those BTRDs, as well as more Iglas, because Spec 96 here on the left is also taking quite a lot of airstrikes, as well as constant air patrols from the Block 52s, and sometimes, I think, attacks with the longbow. But unfortunately, Iglas are not going to be in range anytime soon to kill that thing off before it's going to be in range. Now we've got an SU-25K, luckily dodged a missile there, did not dodge the next one. And this is what you get if you fly in a rather expensive plane of 140 points without providing a seed aircraft to cover it. I'm actually quite surprised this thing is still flying. It does of course have the armor, 2 on the front and 1 on every side. But a seed plane would have been ideal here, both to draw missile fire from the fighters and to see what kind of radar or radar guided AA they may have there. Now let's see how this battle is going to develop. I'm going to push it up a little bit faster. We got more artillery fire coming in here. You can can see that the Bradleys did manage to drop off their riflemen, as well as stunning the VDV and majorly decimating them, because these were pretty significant groups. And Blue 4 here, in the shape of Sir Mickey, is pushing in with a couple of Navy SEALs, which, if they get closer, can start to use their grenade launchers, which will push Red 4 out of this town. And yep, they managed to do it. Now, question for you guys. What could Blue 4 or Red 4 have done here to delay this or make sure that this couldn't have happened? What kind of vehicles or infantry groups or support units would you have put here? Provided that I think he's using a general USSR deck. Maybe motorized, but let's say general. What kind of unit would you put there? And similarly, what kind of units do you think are missing from this picture? I'm going to freeze it for a minute. We got transports, we got a couple of motostrelci up front here, which are blocking off the bridge. Reconnaissance infantry in the middle of the forest. Large groups of motostrelci here. A group of Specialny Jednotki recon infantry, middle of the forest. AA, ATGMs. What is missing from this picture? If anything at all. Maybe there's nothing missing in your mind. Let me know what you think in the comments. This, by the way, is not going to go too well. And I was going to say for the motostrelci, but they're putting up a massive amount of fire, which is completely stunning and panicking those Kustjäger. They might actually get away with it without losing too many forces. I gotta say, for 4 groups of regular infantry, I had expected them to take a lot more losses from 2 groups of elite infantry. But then again, they may have been moving through the fire, which caused them to get panicked already. Got a helo here. It may have gone down, but I'm not sure about that. This side looks okay, but other than those 2 AA units, he does not have a lot on this flank. Nor does Red 4 have a reconnaissance helo on this flank. So Red 4 is open to attack. If Blue 4 would like to do an offensive unit or an offensive pusher, they could come in with a bunch of helos, and they don't have to be expensive. You can just come in with, say, little birds, maybe a couple of cheap cobras, and a reconnaissance cobra. Scout this flank. See, hey guys, there's nothing here. Push into Boris, clear out Boris, circle around, clear out the command infantry, and suddenly Red 4 is losing badly. Because they're going to have to pull out a command vehicle, they're going to be lacking 2 points of income, and they're going to be forced to devote their attention to actually filling out those gaps. So in this situation, Red 4, make sure you put out a a reconnaissance unit anywhere near here. Because right now you're blind. And being blind on the battlefield is never a good thing. Spectre is telling him to move the command vehicle because they may have been spotted. Or the command infantry here. And we got a lot of these fire support vehicles coming in. The IKV-5s. Interesting choice here. But I think there's way too many of them. You don't need 7 of these. And especially if you don't have the recon, they're going to get wiped out really quickly. A lot of Concours flying into these things. They're being thinned out. But they can probably kill off this infantry group. This ATGM force. SU-25K coming in. Slightly overkill for a 50 point or 35 point AA fire support unit, but so be it. And he's paying for it. He lost the SU-25 due to 2 Block 52s. Now, if this Kolos can actually reinforce these guys with more missiles, that would be great, because you can start to nail more of these. And they do have some recon on this flank now, but what would have helped here is something like a tank. And I believe that there is a T-72 M1M on the back here doing nothing. It's not damaged, it has full health, it's almost full fueled. So push this thing forward and you could have easily nuked those 105s quickly. As well as using that tank. So, Casimira, make sure you have a very good idea of what units do I have here. And not only look at your front line, but also the lines slightly behind it. Because these units, these OT-64s, you can spread those out. You can try to come in from the flank here. You can try pushing up with your Motostrelci. You don't need reconnaissance infantry here, but you could have spread out these groups to cover more buildings. This tank should have been here on the front line. It should have been a lot closer to the conflict, which would have made you a massively more effective fighting force on the front line here. And don't take all of this stuff as criticism. That's not the goal. I'm trying to point out what you could have done better here, as well as having my subscribers do the same. We're all trying to help you here. Over on the left, gotta say, Spect is playing a very, very dangerous game here, but at this stage Blue 4 has 50% more points, so they're gonna have to. But they're pushing in a UAZ right through the forest, and if they can park it right there, they can neutralize this zone, which puts them at a +2 advantage. So well played there, but you don't really have the security force to make sure that these guys can actually survive. So if that Bradley gets too close, that CV is gonna either have to move or get destroyed. And you can see that Blue 4 immediately knows what's going on, because they probably figured out that this sector is unlikely for a command unit. They probably have their own units in this tree line to make sure that that's covered. So the only logical position that the CV could be is right there. And immediately he starts taking artillery fire on that position. And the moment that this thing gets stunned, it is no longer capturing. So that is proof for Blue 4 that the CV is actually on this flank. And you can see that the Bradley went in, took it out, and got itself eluded. So this was not some sort of special sniping tactic by Blue 4. They just logicked their way into this kill and to recapturing Ivan. Now we got a Cub 4M or M4 here, which is starting to take artillery fire, so he's moving the Cub away, but also move your Koloss away. These things are quite expensive, and you don't want 2400 points of supplies to just go up in flames, which they tend to do rather quickly. These things have a 10 strength, they have a little bit of armor, but it's not going to protect you against artillery for too long. So easier would have been to just drag a box up around both of these units, the Koloss and the Cub, and pull them back. Would have been a lot safer. Now, we have 15 minutes left, both on the replay timer and the gameplay. So I'm still wondering what side this, or how this is going to end up. Spectre is now realizing that there's a gap in their lines, and he's pushing up a recon helicopter here, as Blue 4 is pushing up reconnaissance infantry here. Just a group of Spiderunner trying to find out what Red 4 has in here. And they're running into a bit of OT-64s here. But unless those things move, yep, there you go. They could be hit by artillery or an airstrike. I'm gonna cheat a little by looking at the neutral here. You can see that the AS-350 is on the move here. And they may have figured out that there is still nothing that seems to be spotting this helicopter, that the helicopter is spotting itself, or that the helicopter is taking fire from. So, depending on how bold they want to be, they could just try pushing all the way around. And then come in either with helicopters, as I mentioned before, or push in with an airstrike going all the way around the map. And, for example, taking an F-111 or some sort of similar larger area bomber and trying to nuke these tree lines. Because this is a pretty easy guess. Your CV is either on this side or on that side. Some people put them in these tree lines, so if you have enough bombers you can do a larger bombing run. But of course having helicopters there which can actually hunt down stuff would be easier. Interesting play here by Blue 4. I think they were trying to fly infantry around, but the helicopters couldn't find a landing zone, so now they're trying to probably fly to this clearing and drop the infantry off there. Which I think is not exactly what he was hoping to achieve. If you want to drop off your infantry, you can do it on these stretches of green here, which is enough space for a helicopter to touch down, and you can still come in from the side. Judging that they're using HKP-4Cs, it's going to be pretty high-end infantry. There you go, Kustjäger. Quite dangerous against enemy infantry. Switch it back to Casimira. Actually, we're We're going to see what Blue 4 has in logistics and reconnaissance here. They have an AS as a reconnaissance unit. They have Spiderunner. They have They have an M3A2 Bradley. Over on this flank, they're pretty blind. They don't have a lot. And over on the right side, see, this thing should have been shot down, but Blue 4 didn't have, or Red 4 didn't have enough AA there. T-72 got sniped, but paid dearly for it. They still got those Marine Jaeger. Over here they got Lynx, which still has their recon infantry aboard. And they're now dual spotting here with these AS-350s. I'm not sure why you'd want to have two of them. One's enough. Let's see if Blue 4... Yeah, Blue 4 can see that. Sorry, Red 4 can see those helos. The moment you see this, you should realize that you have a major hole in your alliance and you should start plugging that. Now, where these prams are going, I'm not sure. They may be going back to the FOB to get resupplied, but it's a massive waste of time. What you want to do with mortars is keep them close to the front line and bring your logistics to them. And usually these things have enough shells and enough fuel to not have to be resupplied unless it's an exceptionally long battle. But this is a waste of micromanagement and a waste of time. Let's see how the battle's going over on this flank. We've got the BMP or the BMD, which is getting killed off by Canadian Airborne. Over on this side, they still don't have a lot. There's still a massive gap here, with a bit of AA here, a reconnaissance unit that's too far back, as well as a T-72 that's too far back. You can be a lot more aggressive with these units. I'm not saying try to get as far as you go, because that could just get your units killed, but you can push to contact, and the moment that you start taking ATGM fire, or that you spot infantry groups or something like that, that's a signal. That's when you need to start either reinforcing that position or making sure you got the right units to get it. And here we go. He managed to snipe it. I'm talking Spec 96. He managed to snipe the recon helicopter, which you can see going down right here. But that thing got way too close. They have to move their CV, and they moved it slightly, but the damage is done. If Blue 4 can land these infantry groups, Red 4 is going to have to devote their attention to actually filling in this gap. And let's see, that AKP is not dead yet. They lost sight of it, but it will spot the command vehicle. And for a command vehicle like this, even a minigun can be deadly. You can see it's taking a bit of damage, and I think that what we just saw was an incoming missile from an M270 ATACMS. There it is. Yeah, display it please. This one. This one fired all the way across the map and managed to kill off the command vehicle over here in Boris. I'm not going to say hoping, but I was expecting that this would happen. If you have no recon on this flank and the enemy notices it, it's done. Because at that stage they can just try and fly in a couple of transport helos or something that they have lying about, bring in an airstrike or a long-range artillery strike, and you're screwed. You just lost command of Boris, which is your only air reinforcement zone, so they cannot bring in aerial reinforcements in the sense of airplanes anymore. That is going to be problematic, because without airstrikes or without air support, you are missing out on quite a significant asset. So make sure you get this thing under control as quickly as possible, because you're also bleeding points. Or actually, they're not bleeding points, because Blue 4 managed to capture Ivan again. Or Red 4 managed to neutralize Ivan again. So they are actually gaining points, albeit slowly. Over here we got the Motostrelci, which seem to be fighting off those Kustjäger, and I'm wondering how effective they have been. Kustjäger may have been destroyed, they may have been pulled back. No, they got them, they've been destroyed. Let's see, the best way to get this zone under control, and Spect is doing it, is flying in a command infantry. It's by far the fastest way to get control of this zone. As well as, I suppose you could say, the safest, because infantry CVs or infantry command units are hardest to find. Blue Force making a push for the next forest here. Trying to get a couple of IKVs as well as Spider-Knight across. Not sure why, but they may start to probe this area. See what's out there. Red 4 is leading by now by about 30 points, which they're going to get up to quickly. And especially now that they've recaptured this zone, Boris, they are getting a +2 advantage. Now they're at the +30 advantage, and you can see that a blue 4 CV is coming in here. They may be thinking that the more CVs you have in the zone, the more points it's going to get you, but unfortunately that's not the way it works. BMD here got mutually destroyed by a Bradley. Let's see if this missile is going to hit faster than the Bradley. Not yet. Bradley's reloading its tow still. But I'm more interested in what's going on here. Because I think that Red 4 is about to get pushed quite badly. And I have a lot of infantry here, but they're not using it. So without any reinforcements here, and now that they luckily have the capacity to bring in airstrikes again, they might be able to stop this. But you will need to start moving units this way, because you're not pushing here, you're not doing anything yet. You might as well try to capture or destroy those STRFs before they get too close. Right flank here, heavily suppressed by BMDs, which are bringing in more VDVs. You can see that these things are all elite, which makes them a lot more effective, very accurate, but they're also quite expensive. You will be paying 25 points each. Good thing is that they also carry quite effective Concours M ATGMs, which will be a threat to any kind of tank that is out there. Now, interesting move here by Spect on the right flank. At this stage, Blue 4 is in trouble, because now Blue 4 has allowed a Red 4 reconnaissance unit to slip behind their lines. I just wouldn't stick around here for too long and try to fly right over this zone and make sure you have artillery to nuke it, which I don't think they have. They have an Ondava here, and I hope they got that thing hotkeyed. I don't think that Spect is actually managing this unit right now, because he's way too engaged in making sure all of his forces survive here. Let's see if he can spot that CV, and they can destroy it with artillery. That's going to give them another +1 point. And it seems that they just lost Gregory. You can see that my prediction was quite accurate. They're getting pushed out here. Those STRFs are clearing this forest rather quickly. And that means that Blue 4 now has control of Gregory, as well as pretty much the rest of the forest. Because these infantry groups are not being fast enough about kicking those guys out. So he's going to keep losing units here. Quite a push here by a lot of Convats, as well as a Leopard C2 Maxis. Not sure what they're trying to achieve here, because you don't really need the infantry dead, you need this sector, or this zone cleared. And considering the low amount of AA that Red 4 has in here, you could risk a suicide bird here, a throwaway bomber, and try to clear out that zone, because you do need the income. And I'm not talking income in units, I'm talking income in points, because Red 4 is taking the lead quite a lot. Now the MI2 is still reconning here. I'm not sure, there you go. Now it's being engaged by a Puff here. It's still flying. It's trying to find that Blue 4 CV, but they're not finding it just yet. So where's that thing hidden? Other side. They may have flown right over it. And unfortunately, so much for Blue 4's, or sorry, for Red 4's reconnaissance unit here. You can see a thunderbolt flying overhead here, which is quite graciously dodging all sorts of AA missiles here. Popping flares. I gotta say, I just love these planes. And yesterday I made a comment about the SK-60Bs being one of the slowest planes in the game. Someone corrected me. Yes, the Thunderbolt at 500 kph is in fact slower. So I stand corrected, it is not the slowest plane in the game, the SK-60B, but it is definitely one of the slowest planes. You can see the STRFs here going to work on all of the infantry that's being very, very unluckily caught out in the open here. If you're dealing with a situation like this, either put smoke around the infantry or in front of the opposing forces to make sure that you're blinding them. These mortars, the prams here are in range, so they could have either been stunning them or putting up smoke, which would have allowed these guys to survive a bit longer. T-72 trying to nuke one of those guys, managed to fire off an HGM and killed it. May have been the pram, but I'm not sure about that. And again, they're flying in, but they're flying in pretty much blind. The AA is coming up late, and you are dealing with 8 autocannons here, or 6 by now, which is not something that helicopters, even Mi-35s with their armor, are designed to fly into. I'm surprised really that they haven't been shot down yet, but they may be just outside the range of those STRFs. But still, this is an incredibly dangerous play without good recon. So, good thing that the Mi-2 arrived when it did, otherwise those Mi-35s may have been easy prey for the autocannons here. Pretty big groups of infantry here, but Mi-35s should be taking care of that relatively quickly with their Yak-B and their rocket pods. Now you can see that they have something here which seems to be a M113, just a transport. Yep, one of them got destroyed, probably by a tank. And judging by the score, Red 4 is going to take the victory here. Simply by clearing out Ivan or suppressing the point income for Blue 4. Managing to neutralize Greg and getting a quite good comeback from their attack at Boris, or from their incursion by Blue 4 at Boris. But the strange thing is they haven't learned anything from it. They still haven't put any kind of recon helicopter or spare command vehicle up here. Or sorry, spare helicopter here. Which means that Blue 4 could do it all over again. They could again come in from the side with a couple of helicopters and still go hunting for these CVs. At this stage of the game it wouldn't have saved Blue 4, but it would have caused Red 4 a major headache because they could not bring in any reinforcements. Anyway, the rest of the game I'm going to skip that up to see what the point value is going to be in the end. Casimira scored 2,500 points, lost 21 and 45. So they actually got a positive ratio, which is a good job, but there are some things that they could have done better. One, make more use of recon. The more recon you have, the better your optics are, the more you can anticipate the enemy movements and react faster. Also, make sure you spread your infantry groups up into smaller units to make them less susceptible to air attack, as well as doing the same for your transports. Because while a group of 4 transports is effective, it may be more effective to have 2 groups of 2 transports, which can be spread out over a larger area, acting as a sort of picket line, which does not require recon units. Other than that, make sure you have a lot more AA, because you kept taking airstrikes by Blue 4. They were just A6 intruders, they're not hard to shoot down. But without good AA or decent AA coverage, you're not going to be able to keep your infantry alive. Other than that, I'm going to leave it to you guys to give both Spec96 and Miss Casimira tips on how to improve their gameplay. So I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of comments you put in the what kind of comments you put down below to help these guys improve. With that, it's the end of the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.